Welcome, everybody, to the Beards and Bible podcast where we talk about beards, Bibles, and everything in between. My name's Josh. I'm joined this morning by my good friend Gabe as he's drinking his morning coffee. Gabe, how are you this morning?
Good. This is one of those in-between topics today.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I'm very interested in breaking it down, but as anyone who is listening to this episode knows, we are going to talk today about the State of the Union address from the year of our Lord 2006. I mean, 2026. Yes.
Who was president in 2006? Was that George W. Bush?
Oh, W.
Was it?
Yeah, that probably... I was looking at approval ratings last night as I was preparing for this podcast. W's approval rating dipped down in the 20s in the last part of his second term. So I would imagine his State of the Union in 06, 07, and 08 was not a happy one. But
No.
yeah, I remember those days. But this
Weapons of mass destruction. We were looking for those around that time.
WMDs, all that stuff. So yeah, so we're going to break down the State of the Union address from last night. And before we do, though, I thought it would be a good idea to kind of have some biblical
Precedent?
Yeah, like a foundation to kind of go on, some biblical principles. So I got some verses I was going to read, and Gabe, maybe you can look up some while I'm reading the first part. So can you look up Daniel 2:21? And I'll read the first. First, I wanted to read the first passage I wanted to read was Psalm 146, verses 3 through 5. And Psalm 146, verses 3 through 5 says, "Put not your trust in princes, in a son of man in whom there is no salvation. When his breath departs, he returns to the earth, and on that very day his plans will perish. But blessed is he whose help is the God of Jacob, whose help is the Lord his God, who made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them." So I think that means that we're not to put our hope in princes, political leaders, rulers. They're just people. People are fallible, sinful, and imperfect. So we keep that in mind even as we hear presidents or leaders or princes speak to us. So you got Daniel 2:21?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belongs wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. And he gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding.
What does that verse mean?
And ultimately, if someone's a king or a ruler, they are there because God put them there. And if they cease to be, it's because ultimately God's in control.
So God's the one that puts them in their position of authority, even if we agree with them or disagree with them or voted for them or didn't vote for them. There is a sovereign God whose kingdom is over all, and God's the one who decides who gets in power and who doesn't.
Ultimately, I mean, we should do what we can. We should do our part to be involved in the process. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we can't sway God's will. There's a degree of surrender, I think, that comes along with that verse of this is who he is, and I'm going to respect that because I know that God put him there for this time.
Yeah. And last verse I wanted to read to start us off, 1 Timothy 2:1-2 says, "First of all, I urge that supplications, prayers, intercessions, and thanksgivings be made for all the people, for kings and for all in high positions, that we may live a peaceful and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way. This is good." So we are to honor and pray for our leaders. I know it says kings, and some people listening are going, "No more kings." Yeah, so they didn't have elected officials in the sense that we know in terms of presidents, prime ministers, things like that. Democracy and representative republics and things like that. for the people of the Bible was probably not like we know them now. You didn't get to vote on who was emperor, right? And so to honor the authority that God puts over you, regardless if they got there by a vote or regardless if they got there because they, it's a hereditary monarchy or whatever, right? The call is to still honor and pray for them. But at the same time, honoring does not mean that we cannot be discerning and wise about some of the claims they make as they seek our support. So it's kind of this tension that we see in Scripture. God puts rulers over us. We are not to put our hope in them. They're just people. They're fallible. They're sinful. They're imperfect. But at the same time, we're to pray for them. We're to honor them. And we are to be good citizens. So how might that biblical foundation inform how we watch the State of the Union address, Gabe?
Well, we don't, as we say in the South, get our knickers in a wad.
Do we say that in the South? That's more of a UK thing, I think.
I feel it. Oh, yeah? Okay. Well, UK listeners can verify if that's something you
think knickers in the
say.
UK, it means the same thing as panties. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, no, I think we don't. When the president of the United States makes a State of the Union address, we don't get emotionally distraught one way or the other. We don't allow our emotions to get out of control, knowing that maybe some things weren't completely true, or maybe they were and we just don't like that, or whatever. I think there's people on both sides of the aisle who are probably listening to this podcast feel very strong emotions towards our current president. There seems to be in our entire nation, there's no neutral ground when it comes to Donald J. Trump. But yeah, I think we have a level head. We have self-control, and we just trust that God's in control and that He will, I guess, put kings in place and take kings out of place.
Sure.
The same applies to a ruler of the United States of America, for sure.
Absolutely. And, at the same time, we do our part in being responsible and involved to whatever extent we feel the Lord's leading in the political process as much as we can. Yeah. So let's jump into this. Just a couple of thoughts just right off the bat. Sorry, my little dog is in the office with me this morning, and I'm trying to keep him quiet so he doesn't wake up the rest of the house. And
what did he just knock down?
Knocked down a power strip that was near the side of the thing. He's looking for something to chew on, and I'm put his chew toys away from him because it makes squeaky sounds. So I don't want squeaky sounds on our podcast. So
is he gonna chew on the power strip, and is that okay?
I don't think he's chewing on it.
Is it plugged in the wall?
Okay. He would have Toasty Charlie if that was the case. No, it's not plugged in. So
yeah, it's taking a long nap, kids.
Actually, hang on. You give us your thoughts on why it was the longest State of the Union address in U.S. history. Because this was a doozy. Okay. Let me unplug the power strip. You tell us why you think he talked for as long as he did. So.
Okay, I will. I'll talk. I think it was, what is it? It was 2 hours and some change, I think. I remember turning on the television at 8 p.m. and knowing that my bedtime is promptly at 9, being over 40, And no, it was long, but I think it was long because I think the president had a lot of work to do. I think Trump knew that his base is divided right now over him, and I would say the perceived lack of success that he has had to turn the economy completely around like he claimed he was going to be able to do. So he had a lot of work to do. So he took that 2 hours to try to do that. He tried to make a case as to why he should go down the history books as someone who took a sketchy economy and redeemed it. He tried to unify the base. I think he also used it to project into the future some possible Republican candidates for president, and try to set the stage for them and kind of pave the way for them. I think he sensed polarization in the United States and used it to. I mean, a lot of awards last night. A lot of like a couple Medal of Honor recipients,
Presidential Medal of Freedom or whatever.
Freedom, yeah. I mean, a lot of awards. I think he was doing that to show we're strong. He was trying to highlight who the heroes of our society are and try to unify the United States. So I think he had a lot to do in that 2-hour block. And
do you think it was kind of a sales pitch to America of, hey, America, I'm your president. I've done a lot of awesome things, and you should give me the credit that's due to me?
I think every State of the Union has that vibe. Everyone that I've watched,
some are more subtle than the others. Is there not?
Yeah.
Is there not quite as subtle?
What legacy am I leaving behind? And if you can claim and control the narrative of that legacy, then you can really go down the history books as something different than what maybe people perceive you as.
So I mean, it was the opening part of his Union address. Basically set the tone for the whole thing, and I wrote it down. He said this statement: "Our nation is back, bigger, better, richer, and stronger than ever before." And of course, standing ovation from the Republicans. No ovation at all. Everybody sitting down from the Democrats. Really played up the whole 250-year anniversary of the U.S. This is the golden age of America was a statement that he made. He spent a lot of time talking about how things were a year ago, like how bad things were and how bad he, like when he became president, how bad things were because of Joe Biden. And he said this: after just 1 year, we have achieved a transformation like never seen before. So do you think Americans buy that? Because a lot of it was like, hey, this is what we're seeing. And it's kind of like Americans are going, is it?
Yeah,
I mean, like grocery prices are up. Housing prices are up. Like, there's a lot of unrest in the streets. Like, what have we? And so that's kind of why I say the sales pitch of almost like, yeah. So did people buy it? I mean, I don't. It's an interesting thing to think.
I think probably a good 75-80% of Trump supporters went to bed last night after the speech feeling better about Trump.
Right. Okay.
And I think they woke up this morning and they're going to go to the grocery store after work today and they're going to feel less better about Trump.
Yeah.
Or they're going to try to buy a house and they're going to realize, wait a second, the interest rates are still at pretty high levels. I mean, they're not super high. Like, I mean, they were higher in 2007 than they are now, but it's all relative. But that doesn't matter to a first time home buyer. It's like it's a big deal. And buying a house is buying gas, buying eggs, buying all that stuff. It's like it's kind of a big deal. It's where it hits you everyday life. And so I think he did a good job of putting everyone to bed, feeling more confident about his leadership skills. But I think how this plays out with Iran and just what it looks like everyday life is going to be whether or not that kind of sales pitch kind of like sticks.
Right. Yeah. So spent a lot of time in the opening narrative really bringing up and kind of laying down what he was going to spend a lot of time talking about over the course of the next 2 hours or so, which I didn't get the full runtime. You want to Google how long the speech actually was. It was the longest State of the Union speech in American history. So he broke a record set by Bill Clinton. And I want to say he broke it pretty, But so he laid out illegal immigration. That was a big topic he spent a lot of time talking about last night, talking about the flow of fentanyl, how that's decreased, the biggest decline of the murder rate that we've ever seen in our nation's history, which some of those claims are halfway true. So, I mean, that's awesome. Yeah, there's been a decrease of fentanyl sales, decrease in the murder rate. But as we'll see, we'll kind of look at some numbers. Some of the claims he made about the biggest, the greatest no one's ever seen anything like it. That's not true, but he uses a lot of, again, exaggeratory language to kind of make a point.
Okay, so Donald Trump's speech last night was 108 minutes. He beat the last record set in 2025 by Donald Trump of 100 minutes. And then right behind that in 2000 was Bill Clinton at 89, Bill Clinton at 85. And then the next two are Donald Trump again at 82 and 81 from his prior term.
Okay. So last year's, I think the one that you're talking about in 2025 was it wasn't a State of the Union. It was,
yeah, it was just a speech. Yeah, speech in front of Congress. Yeah. Sorry.
So yeah, he talked about inflation. Talked about how inflation has slowed down at record paces. Again, not really true, but we'll look at some of those numbers. Mortgage costs are down. And I texted you last night because I just could not stop laughing. He said, we're winning too much. We don't know what to do about it. People are saying, why are we winning so much? We're getting tired of winning. I just started laughing because I'm like, this is just...
But it's that I was smiling. I was kind of laughing.
I think a lot of people that heard that were, because I think he was trying to be funny and winsome and kind of take his own persona and make it cartoonish, you know.
Oddly enough, I think that's endearing to most people. Like Stacey and I were like laughing and saying like, "Oh, that's funny," right. But it gives you, and from just being completely honest, it kind of like subconsciously gives you this sense of pride in our leadership and everything. And I think that's, if you heard your boss saying that, you'd think, "Oh, this guy's a little bit of a goofball," but man, that's kind of cool though. He's so proud of us. Right.
Yeah. So the State of the Union is strong was what he led off with, right? And this was his pitch. This was what he was going for throughout the duration of the State of the Union speech, which is not unusual. Like you said, that's what every president wants the nation to know, that on his watch, the State of the Union is strong. Things are going well. You elected me, and you should have, and you need to keep the party that I represent in power because this is all the cool stuff we're doing, right? There was, I think this phenomena was interesting. The Donald Trump phenomena is what some people would call political gaslighting, and he's not the only politician who does it, right? This idea of, if you look at the numbers, his approval rating is in the 30s. His disapproval rating is in the 60s. But the way that he presents itself is, everybody loves me, I'm the most popular, like that kind of thing. He knows he's got enemies, but it's this weird way of like reframing reality for you as a voter and as a listener of, our economy's booming. And you're like, it is? And he's like, yes, it is. It's booming. You're like, well, I somebody tell that to my bank account, right? And so one could say that's almost like a form of gaslighting. Like, here's my reality. Well, your reality's not true. Here's the reality, Did you notice that? I know that's not just Trump that does that, but it kind of feels that way from politicians sometimes.
Yeah, the economy is, I would say, nearly always the focal point of these State of the Union addresses since, probably, I don't know when it would have started, but I think, Reagan said it's the economy's stupid, and he knew that a lot of presidents are going to get elected or reelected, or the legacy is going to be fossilized in history books based on what the economy was like. It's the case with like Jimmy Carter. We talk about Jimmy Carter based on the state of the economy when he was president, and that's the biggest thing we think about with Jimmy Carter and presidents before and after him. So I think that's important for a sitting president to come in and immediately seize control of the narrative and say the economy is booming. And there were some things that there was grains of truth when he was saying like the stock market and your 401ks are probably saw that. Like the stock market did hit historic highs multiple times. And my 401k saw that and felt that. And I mean, so I appreciate that, but I don't see a big relief in inflation yet.
Yeah. We'll look at the numbers here in a minute.
I don't know that we
we'll
will.
Look at the numbers here in a minute.
Yeah.
Kind of what he said versus what's actually happening. But I mean, it's not unusual for Trump to be egotistical. It's almost like his brand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Trump egotism we saw last night is almost as if he knows it's funny to some people, and it's like a cartoonish persona that he plays up. But it's almost like he also knows it's irritating and infuriating to a lot of people too, for him to brag about all he's done. But he does it anyway, almost as if it's like this joke to push people's buttons at the same time, right? And I think the egotism we saw last night was at an all-time high, to the point where if you watched Mike Johnson and JD Vance sitting behind him, it almost looked like they were trying to keep their eyes from rolling, and they were smirking at some of the stuff he was saying. And it was really hard to tell. I mean, does he really think that about himself? Is he really that egotistical, or is this like a play? You know, I don't know. But it was at an all-time level last night. I don't know if you picked up on that or not, but yeah. So the rhetoric was a lot of the hottest, the greatest. Nobody can believe what they're watching. None of that's unusual from Trump. But let's look at some of the claims he made. So he said that I secured commitments for more than $18 trillion pouring in from all over the globe. Again, he's referring to tariffs. And actually, the White House website has got that figure at about 9.6 trillion, which is half what he said last night. So that was highly exaggerated. Just kind of happened to conveniently double that number, which is kind of funny. And in fact, some experts have said that 9.6 trillion in pledges from different tariff agreements may not actually come to fruition. Some are unrealistically large compared to the gross domestic product of some of the countries involved. So that's a highly exaggerated statement that he just sort of rattled off because it sounded really impressive. But the truth is that's about twice as much as the White House website has listed it being, which is interesting. And there's inflation. He said inflation has plummeted at record levels. So that's a pretty lofty statement, right? So year over year in prices for January 2026, it's about 2.4%, which is lower than the year over year rate when he took office. But when he took office, it had already fallen from the peak of the summer of 2022 when inflation was all-time high under President Biden. So in 2022, that summer, inflation rose to 9%, which is crazy. But Biden's last month in office, year-over-year inflation was just 2.9%. So when Trump took office, it was kind of hovering at 2.9%, and he's gotten it to 2.4%. So that's like, half a percentage point. So plummeting at record paces, I'm not really sure. Do you know what I mean? I mean, how do you see that? I don't.
Yeah, no, I think that was definitely an exaggeration.
Yeah. So the Federal Reserve says inflation needs to be about 2% year over year. His is at 2.4%. So he's still got some room to go with that. So Trump talked about price decreases, and he's right. I mean, gas has dropped about 6%. That's awesome. He talked about cars dropping in their value. Well, the price of new and used cars has dropped a little under 1%. So he's right, but maybe not as much as he's seen. But what he didn't talk about was groceries are up by about 2%. Electricity is up by 6.3%. Housing is up by 3.4%. Medical care is up by 3.2%. And clothing and apparel is up by 1.8%. So none of that was mentioned, as it would not have been, obviously. One thing that is true, and I think he did talk about this, wages on Trump's watch have so far risen faster than inflation. So that is a good sign that people are making more money even as inflation continues to rise. So, yeah. Anything else about just rhetoric, like the fact that, he would say something and then the substance of what he was saying may not match necessarily the claims that he was making?
Yeah, I think a big focus he was harking on a lot was illegal immigration. And one of the things that stood out to me was the young lady that was murdered on the train. Irina.
I didn't catch her name, but her parents were there.
Zarina, that's what it is. And he said, offhand comment, he said at the end of it, he's like, he came through our open borders, shouldn't have been here. And I just did a quick fact check on that, and I was like, that's interesting. I didn't know he was an illegal immigrant. But it turns out that's not the case. Like I guess he wasn't an illegal immigrant. So stuff like that, but it was, I don't know if he just made the comment offhand and just didn't realize his mistake, or if he was trying to kind of piece together his overarching narrative about the topic.
So I'm not sure he said that he came through open borders. I think he said that. So the guy who stabbed that Ukrainian girl on the train in Charlotte was someone who had been in a mental institution and had been arrested 10 or 12 times. And basically they kept letting him out. Right. So it was a big political scandal in the sense of like, they didn't just keep him incarcerated as they should have. They kept letting him out because of some policy that is kind of supported by more left-leaning policymakers. So I'm not. I have to go back and watch it, but I don't remember him saying that he came in through open borders. I think he was kind of capitalizing on the fact that he was released even as he had violent offenses on his record, and that was because of, according to Trump, kind of some leftist policies that would lead to that. So. But with all of that, I mean, we talk about the guests that he had. With all of his guests were there, as in all State of the Union addresses. This is not unique to Trump, but his guests were there that were both symbolic and very, very politically expedient, right? So I wrote down the guests that were there last night. U.S. men's hockey team, which was kind of cool. I'm an Olympics fan, so it was kind of cool to see them all showing up with their medals. That was awesome. Buddy Taggart, who is a World War II veteran that was over 100 years old, which is kind of awesome. There were two veterans there last night. I can't remember the name of the second one, the one that was awarded the Medal of Honor last night, which is kind of unusual for that to happen during a State of the Union address, to be awarded a Medal of Honor. But the second one was a Navy pilot. I can't remember his name, but he's the one that got the Medal of Honor. There was a Coast Guard rescue swimmer that rescued those girls from Camp Mystic in Texas last year. There was the very first customer of TrumpRx.com or .gov or whatever it is. The woman who got a drug for IVF that she used to pay $3,500 for, but she got it for $500. And so she was there, and there was a big deal made about that. There was a little girl who was hit by a truck driven by an illegal immigrant who was given a driver's license. And so that was really played up. There was a young woman named Sage Blair. Did you see that? What do you know about her? That's a really interesting story.
Was she the one that was like trans and then ran away or something? Or was that? Okay. Yeah, I didn't know anything about her until he mentioned her last night. That apparently, she, according to the speech last night, I guess, was transitioning to be male via the school administrators. Like they were encouraging her to transition to to become a male and
not telling her parents,
keeping it secret from her parent. Yeah, not telling her parents, and then she ran away. Then she came back, and now she's transitioned back to female, and now she has a full ride scholarship to Liberty. That was interesting. Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting that became something that he brought up, right? I mean, because for the most part, all of the noise about the trans controversy, it seems like it's died down quite a bit since after the election. Because that was a topic that he really hammered during the election cycle, and he was polling very high on support. I mean, most people do not support trans affirming care, if you want to call it that, for minors. Most people don't support that, right? Republican or Democrat. Most people don't support that. That is a kind of a fringe issue that the Democratic Party, for whatever reason, has sided with kind of their fringe on that. And so the fact that he brought that story up was a pretty gutsy move, because the Democrats don't want stories like that to be brought up or brought out, right? So that was an interesting one. Erica Kirk was there last night, Charlie Kirk's widow. And then again, the parents of the Ukrainian young woman who was murdered on the train. Did I miss anybody that was there?
No, you covered it. I mean, possibly, but yeah, it's a big list. There's a lot of notable people for sure.
Yeah. So we got a Presidential Medal of Freedom. We got a Medal of Honor.
Yeah, two
medals of honor. Yeah.
Yeah. A couple Purple Hearts.
Yeah.
The National Guard soldiers who won posthumously.
Right. Yeah, that was an interesting one. Why do you think there was so many medals given away? Do you think that was kind of just trying to unite Americans over, you should all be celebrating for this, and this is what the Trump administration is about, or what's the deal with that?
That's a good question. I don't know the motives, but it seems like the war drums are kind of pounding a little bit with Iran, and maybe if you're looking at trying to increase the size of your military. I mean, I would say like this is a good way to do it is to make young Americans kind of direct their attention towards heroic acts of servicemen and women, and praise them publicly and say, these are the heroes of our society, and that would kind of help swell the ranks. But I don't know. That's probably a stretch, honestly, to speculate that. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think he's
realizing that the military is the support from the military is key to staying in office and having an effective fighting force that's willing to go abroad and to do hard things for you.
Yeah.
So he could be just appealing to that
sure
base.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's his biggest supporter. I mean, that's, what I'm saying, like that base is I don't know what the numbers or breakdown are, but I mean, majority of them I would think would be Trump voters, right? Veterans, ex-military, current military, Yeah. So policy priorities. What policies do you think receive the most airtime? And which ones do you think are actually the most urgent for the country right now, based on, which ones he talked about the most versus which ones people care about the most?
Wow. The one he talked about the most, man, the one that comes to mind would be he talked a lot about illegal immigration.
Yeah.
A lot of, I don't know if it was the most or not, but he definitely spent a lot of time talking about that and making references to illegal immigrants, requiring voter ID, requiring citizenship to vote.
Save America Act.
Not allowing illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses, and the list goes on. That definitely took a lot of airtime. Most important, man, that one honestly is pretty high up there. I would say that anything dealing with the economy is pretty important too. That's a tough call, because you need secure borders and you need a strong economy to have a thriving nation, to where you can lift people out of poverty and put people to work and bring people into the country through through a legal immigration process and give them a better future.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
Yeah, it definitely seemed to me like he spent most of his time talking about illegal immigration, and I wonder if he did because there is so much scrutiny against ICE right now.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many people who have bought into the narrative that ICE is nothing but Gestapo and it's targeting innocent people. And he was very much trying to make the case that the problem with illegal immigration is that there are people who are coming to the U.S. illegally who are bad actors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of his big selling point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why he had the little girl that got hit by the truck driven by an illegal immigrant who had a driver's license, and spent so much time talking about the sale of fentanyl going down because of the curb of illegal immigration. So
Mm-hmm.
he talked a lot about that. I'd say that's probably the biggest issue he talked about. I did also hear him talking about the economy a lot. His big, beautiful bill, right? So he talked about no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, tax cuts for Americans, and cutting down inflation, right? And we looked at the numbers. I mean, the inflation has slowed, but maybe not as much as he said it has, but it's slowed. Did you hear him kind of chiding the Supreme Court justices for knocking down the tariff rulings? It's kind of an interesting moment. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. He was giving him grief for it as he was talking about tariffs and how tariffs were a great thing, and you could kind of see just the rustling of the response, because it's kind of one of those issues that some people are divided about, even in his own party. And so, yeah, it was kind of interesting. He kind of knew as he was talking about it that not everybody was in on it with him, but he's kind of, giving them a hard time about it. It was an interesting moment.
I will say that I've never seen a State of the Union where the president openly kind of ridiculed the opposing party as much as he did last night. With he said things like, as intense as all these people are like sickos or crazy.
These
something
people
like
are
that.
sick.
Yeah, because they didn't stand and applaud for certain things. Which I think there was one where he said, if you agree with this statement I'm about to make, stand and applaud or something like that. I forget what he said, but it was like a pretty straightforward statement. I would say I agreed with, and the other side just did not stand and clap, and it was a really key moment, I think, for him to paint the Democrats as people who are ultimately at odds with the average American citizen. And he had to do that last night because the midterms are approaching, and his base is divided, and so he had to kind of unify Americans against this political opponent, and that was a key moment. I think that was wise for him to do. I don't agree with the motives and everything. I don't agree with putting that in the speech, but I think if you're going to have to quickly unify your political base against someone,
right, nothing unites like a common enemy, right? That's
exactly.
Yeah. So the statement he made was, the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens and not illegal aliens. Stand up if you agree.
Yeah.
Everybody on the Republican side stood up. No one on the Democrat side stood up.
Mm-hmm. And the applause was...
It went on and on and on.
And on. It was the longest standing ovation, almost the longest standing ovation of the night.
Which was a really... it was kind of an eerie moment, right? It kind of felt like... I don't know why that was such an eerie moment, because he kind of just stood in defiance and stared down that whole side of the aisle.
Yeah.
And so the part that I don't know, it's going to be, it was really scary to me, was antagonizing and picking at the other side, saying things like, these people are crazy, these people are sick, these people are destroying America. And And so it was just, I don't know, man. Like it's a very strange thing for a U.S. president to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he was trying to unify his base, his conservative base, at the expense of
national unity,
political national unity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and that's the direction American politics has gone in the past,
Yeah, so
10 to 12
the
years.
moral imagery was very much Trump loves America, his policies love America, his party loves America. That's the good side, right? He even said things like, during my tenure, there's been a tremendous renewal of religion, Christianity, faith. He said with line last night, I just laughed at it. He goes, we love religion. I was like, okay. And so I'm like sitting there listening, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. But as a pastor, I'm really struggling with the conflation of Christianity with the Republican Party and the Trump administration. To present any sort of renewal in the Christian faith or religion as is somehow being a result of the Trump administration, there's going to be some people listening that go, if being interested in Christianity means that you're a Trump supporter, then I don't want anything to do with it. Right? Like that's kind of that's a tough. So the moral message that he painted was a very, I don't know, good guys, bad guys, and nothing in between. And what's so funny is that's the exact stance that you see on the other side. Is good guys, bad guys, nothing in between, and good guys are those opposing Trump, bad guys are anybody standing with Trump. And it's such a man.
Well, I think you framed it in like a good versus evil kind of. That's a good way to do that. Is like we're the ones who are approved, living in a state of approval from God, and they are not. And yeah, I think he's recognizing that there is a large portion of his base and the American right and conservatism that is inching closer and closer to what I would call Christian nationalism.
Very much so.
And marching closer to that. And so he's recognizing that and pulling those people into his base and affirming the direction they're going in, that we are a Christian nation. Christianity is growing. I love religion. So I think that was, for him, I think he realized he needed to do that in order to further unite his base.
Yeah, and that's a risky move politically, because that whole Christian nationalist, white nationalist, anti-Semitic, isolationist base is pretty fringe, and there's a lot of people who would consider themselves conservative that would go, whoa, we're not that, right? So if you cater to the fringe, the danger is you're going to split the party down the road, because your fringe is going to break off and form a third party, or your fringe is going to break off and kind of be its own thing, and then you're not going to have a united, coherent cause that more people can agree with, right?
Yeah, but that you're assuming that he's thinking like a decade from now, but
he's not.
He's thinking, how am I going down in the history books, and then what are the midterms going to shape up to be? And that's kind of the vibe of American policymaking the past 20 years has been like, what can we do? It doesn't matter how bad we trash our political future, as long as we can get the next 4 to 5 to 10 years. At what it doesn't matter at what expense we do that, and that's drives me nuts. But that's just the state of affairs in American politics sometimes.
So foreign policy was definitely America first, right? A lot of talk about the tariffs for American prosperity. A lot of talk about ending wars. He started listing and rattling off all the wars he's ended.
8 of them.
8 wars.
8 wars he ended.
Which I'm like, okay. Closing borders, peace through strength. And then towards the end, I think it was interesting. You did get a unified response from both parties about the policy against Iran, that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. You saw it kind of bipartisan support for that.
Which I thought that was a interesting, very symbolic move of kind of the agreement of, okay, they are the largest sponsor of terrorist proxies all over the world. And he said, and as long as that's the case, like they will not have a nuclear weapon. So I think that was a very interesting, I think most Americans would say here about that, right?
Yeah, well, I'd say the American right is again beginning to split on that issue, and you see, especially you see that with like political pundits like Tucker Carlson saying, we do not need to go to war with Iran whatsoever because ultimately it's just Israel tugging the leash and making us do it. And
what is his beef against Israel? He like straight up is deranged. Like he thinks everything is related to Israel. Like,
well, it gets a lot of views and a lot of that's ultimately, him and people like Candace Owens just get tons and tons of views if you can promote this like grand conspiracy theory. And that's what he's ultimately trying to do is that people get that dopamine hit. So they listen to it, and that's what gets him paid. So yeah, but it doesn't matter really because it's shaping the American right towards this idea of like, we do not need to be involved in any foreign affair really, and especially those in the Middle East, and especially those who we believe are being pushed by the Israeli government. So the other option is like, let's just leave our hands off of it, and if somebody gets nuked over there, okay, whatever. But that's the truth of it is I see this kind of within the ranks of American conservatism and the right in America, this swelling of isolationism that's taking place. And yeah, so I think it was interesting to see that he was like sticking to his guns on Iran, and it seemed to be a bipartisan response to that.
For sure. So healthcare, he's never really offered a clear, coherent plan about what he's going to do to reverse the Affordable Care Act. But last night was probably as much as we got, right? But even then, we didn't really get much of a plan other than he said that he was going to reverse the Unaffordable Care Act. Some people call it Obamacare. I call it the Unaffordable Care Act. And so kind of laid out what the new healthcare is going to look like. But again, if you study the history of like his rhetoric about what his healthcare plan is going to be, there's still a lot more things that are unknown than known about it. But last night he talked about maximum price transparency with the new healthcare plan, stopping all payments to the big insurance companies and giving that money to the people so they get their own healthcare at better cost, ending wildly inflated costs of prescription drugs. He made the statement, it's never happened before. Other presidents tried, but they could never make it happen. And then I showed up and we're going to make it happen. You're like, okay. So,
yeah. The fact of the matter is once you roll out an entitlement program to millions and millions of people, it's hard to wean them off of that. And so he's probably just going to present a repackaged version of the Affordable Care Act. And yeah, it's just Americans can't be weaned off of that entitlement.
Yeah. So we didn't get a ton of, we got a lot of rhetoric about it last night, but if you actually study the issue, you study what is actually being proposed, it's kind of a nothing burger in some senses. We don't really know enough about it just yet to know kind of, excuse me, kind of what it's going to be. So, okay. Yeah. So the response from the opposing party, what'd you notice?
Yeah, just the typical, like, sitting while everyone else is doing a standing ovation. There's I would say, way less bipartisan applause for different things that he said than I've seen in the past. We saw one guy, I forget his name, holding the sign at
Al
the beginning.
Green.
He had that little rolled out. Al Green, yeah. I think he got escorted out at
He
some
did.
point.
He had a sign that read, "Black people aren't apes."
Oh, interesting. Is he making reference to
Yeah,
that
he
video
is.
that Trump shared?
So President Trump shared a video on
Okay.
Truth Social a couple weeks ago, a month ago, something like that, that showed the Barack and Michelle Obama as monkeys.
That was a disaster.
Yeah.
But I think to his credit, I think it was like a video that somebody in his social media team screen recorded the first video, and then as it was transitioning onto the next video, which was the ape video, they stopped the screen recording, but not before they showed Barack and Michelle Obama as apes, and then they shared that on social media.
Oh, sheesh.
They should have I guess they should have trimmed that off. But the argument was, well, who is working for a social media that the algorithm is feeding these really racist videos to this person? So yeah, that was just a disaster, and he should have publicly brought that. Just should have lambasted that person, whoever it was, and then made a spectacle out of firing them. But he didn't. So yeah, that was an unfortunate.
Yeah, it was, and even Tim Scott, who has always been a Trump guy, right? He's always been the only Republican African American that's just consistently gone to bat with him. I mean, obviously Ben Carson, others like that, but Tim Scott's always been diehard Trump supporter. Really spoke out against it and said that's racist, right? Because it was. I mean, it was very racist. But I honestly don't think, though, that that Representative Al Green from Texas that had that sign, I really don't think people gave it much merit, to be honest. A lot of Democrat politicians just boycotted the speech altogether. That was kind of a big thing going into the speech. There's going to be a lot of people just don't even show up, and it was true. There was a lot of people that weren't there. Some of them had a button that said "Release the files" in reference to the Epstein files, which is interesting because they've been released, but I think there's also stuff that's been redacted, or names that have been held back, or other things like that. So maybe that's what that was in reference to. And then we had what were we going to say about that?
Oh, just there was a lot of information redacted, and I think it was redacted. The DOJ redacted it for various reasons, but some of the the things investigations are still ongoing, or you're also protecting the reputation of people that were in some of the files, but it isn't what is the word? Implying that you committed a crime or something like that. It's so I can appreciate them redacting some of this stuff, but they need to kind of come out and say this is why we're doing that.
Right.
So sorry.
No. So last kind of response, Ilhan Omar. Trump was talking,
and Rashida Tlaib.
Yeah. So Trump was talking about the fraud situation in Minneapolis related to the Somali daycare stuff and Somali immigrants. Of course, Ilhan Omar is Somali from Minnesota, I believe. And so she was yelling out to Trump, "You killed Americans! You killed Americans! You killed Americans!" That was her response that she was yelling to him. And I think by that, maybe she was referring to the two people that were killed by ICE, Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Perhaps that's what she means by that. So
maybe.
Yeah. And then Abigail Spanberger from Virginia gave the official Democratic response. I got to watch a little bit of that last night. Did you get to watch any of that?
No.
Here's just a thought, and I'd love to hear your thought about this. I think that the contrast between Trump speaking and then Abigail Spanberger getting up and speak was almost like your drunk alcoholic uncle shows up at the family reunion. He's ranting and raving, and then your really sassy aunt gets up and puts him in his place. That's kind of what it felt like. So I'm hoping the contrast is not being drawn in the minds of people between male and female, right? So like masculine energy, red-blooded American, hoorah, military, Medal of Honor, dude, and then strong, independent woman. Right. I hope that's not the contrast, but that's kind of what the energy in the room was when I turned on her speech. And a lot of it was, ranting about the immorality of his immigration enforcement. And so going on and on about children being separated from their parents and, a little boy being used as bait by ICE and, nursing mothers separated from their babies and stuff like that. And so it's a lot of kind of appealing to, it is morally sick. Yeah, it is absolutely depraved morally for you to listen to anything this man had to say. So yeah, it was an interesting response. But kind of like, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think American conservatism, and by implication, the Republican Party to some extent, tends to err on the side of like the less compassionate. I would say
100%.
They're not fueled by compassion; they're fueled by rule of law, by Constitution, by things that are unemotional. I would say like incompassionate. Not that they're like mean or anything like that, but I think it's like we're looking at facts, right? Like the Ben Shapiro, facts don't care about your feelings kind of thing. Where I think a lot of Democrats and a lot of liberalism looks at things through the lens of compassion, social justice, equity, and those sorts of words and ideas. Yeah. And so, typically, just if we look at like the dichotomy of men versus women, men and women tend to have this mirroring views of everyday life, and that's why a mother is always nurturing, and just that's kind of the essence of a woman in a mother, and then the man is always like, kind of the harder prepare the child for the world, and so they could be both are almost kind of like needed. You need both sides of the coin. They have to work together though, is the thing. And right now it's like we have both, but they're both pointing the finger across the aisle and saying they're evil. Right. Yeah. They are what's ruining the nation.
There isn't much of a cooperation between let's be for rule of law and let's be for structure and order, but let's do so in a compassionate way. Right. That's kind of a crazy idea to some people. It's like, no, because we care for people, we don't need to have laws that would hurt them. It's like, well, if people are trying to hurt others, then we do need to have laws that would protect those that they would be trying to hurt. Right. Like this is crazy. But then the whole, they're animals, they're crooked, they're monsters. It's like, well, not every person that commits a crime is an animal and a monster. Right. So where's the nuance and the subtlety and the compassion and the truth somewhere? And I feel like we're missing it in a big way. But kind of landing the plane, Gabe, like what was your reaction? Like is there a moment that kind of elicited a reaction from you that you would just say, like, this is how it landed for you, and this is kind of what you're thinking about this morning after watching it last night?
Yeah, I think I think it was actually a good speech.
Even David Axelrod from CNN, who's a Democrat, he was Barack Obama's. He said it was a good speech. Yeah. So that's kind of crazy.
I think Trump needed to do a couple big things, and that is not make a big gaffe, and then do everything he can to unite the nation ahead of the midterms, and project his administration as being successful. Yeah. And I think he did that. Obviously, there are some things we can scratch the surface on and say, it kind of, it didn't really end 8 wars, but he maybe was a factor in some things coming to fruition, but or maybe some of the wars he started and then ended. But yeah, I think he did that. I think it was a successful speech in that sense. but I hope people don't hear me saying that, he's the savior or the best president ever or anything. That's not what I'm saying. But I think he accomplished the goals he needed to accomplish.
No, I'd agree with you. I think that he did give a speech that accomplished the goals and laid out his, policies and stuff. I think what I'm feeling is this. I'm just really concerned about the open antagonizing of the political party that isn't in power right now. Because my thought is this: what kind of backlash is that going to breed in the days ahead? What happens if their guy or their gal gets elected? Right?
Yeah.
When you call them sick people for 4 years and you call them crazy for 4 years, what happens when the sick people and the crazy people get elected? Right? I mean, we got to think through that.
Yeah, no, it's setting a really bad precedence. And I'm going to go out on a limb and just make a prediction that I think the next president is going to be a Democrat. Unless J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio, which he was setting them up last night to be candidates, can really make a solid case for conservatism in the Republican Party. I think people are disenfranchised to the point where they will not vote for a Republican president in the next. But that's just my very limited knowledge and experience making a prediction. But yeah, and I think we look at the bigger picture of he's calling all these people these names. That's going to have some serious repercussions down the road in terms of people trusting the election process, trusting their leadership, and not being violent. I do appreciate him. He said last night, we condemn political violence when we're talking about Charlie Kirk assassination.
Yeah, I appreciated that too.
But at the same time, out of the other side of his mouth, he's talking and calling all these people, these names, which, basically implying that they're the source of all your problems. And that's a very incendiary statement.
That'd be like somebody saying, we condemn political violence, but Trump is a Nazi. Right? So we condemn political violence, but these people are crazy sickos. Okay. Well, I mean, there's going to be some really unstable people watching at home that think that the best thing to do to help our country is to take those people out, right? So, that was a little concerning to me. I kind of just think that more than anything, it kitchen table issues are going to be what affects people on an everyday basis, right? Gas prices, grocery prices, stuff like that. And I think that's going to be what people care more about in the long run than, foreign involvement in Venezuela and, stuff like that. So I don't know. We'll see as we head into the midterm what that means, what that looks like. But as we land the plane, could you read another verse for us to kind of end? That's Hebrews 12:28.
Yeah. Is that from the Bible?
It is, yeah. This is the Beards and Bible
read a Bible
podcast. Did you know that? So
Hebrews 12:28. Yes. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe.
So, earthly institutions are shakeable. Right.
So we shouldn't get our knickers in a wad.
Yeah, exactly. The kingdom of God is not shakeable. We're inheriting a kingdom that is not shakeable, right? So ultimately, our gratitude and worship should be for the fact that regardless of who's in power, both now or 4 years from now or 8 years from now, as believers, man, our kingdom is not shaken by whoever's in power, whoever's not in power. So it's right for us to be informed. It's right for us to be discerning. But at the end of the day, we don't put our hope in princes. We put our hope in the Lord our God. So that'll preach. Yeah, man. Well, what you got going on the rest of your day?
Just work. Trying to get a foundation laid.
Christ is my firm foundation.
Yeah. Trying to get a foundation. And I'm learning how to do what's called block and fill foundations, where you actually have to dig footers into the ground and lay block and pour a foundation on top of that. Yeah, so it's calculating block, calculating mortar, calculating bolts, anchor bolts, dirt, and yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I would be terrible at that.
So, but working with all the different parties involved, like concrete finishers, concrete truck, material providers, municipality inspectors, and all that stuff, it's fun. And then it starts raining randomly, and you're like, no, you cannot have
How many bottles of Mountain Dew are on a job site in South Alabama when you're doing stuff like that?
Man, honestly, it's more Modelo's than it is Mountain Dews. Yeah. Lots and lots of Modelo's. Yeah.
We love Modelo. We love the blocks. We love the cervezas. But not when we're trying to lay blocks down. Yes.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I made this super awkward, our concrete finisher guy, his name's Juan, super, super awesome guy, like funny guy. He's Mexican, and he came up to me yesterday, and I was giving him a set of plans, and I was listening to the news as he was walking up, and I was like, hey, did you hear we got El Mincho? And he kind of like stopped and looked at me, and I was like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And he goes, it's okay, it's good. And I was like, okay. I was like, should I not have brought that up?
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I don't know. And then he didn't mention anything else about it, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to talk about this anymore.
Oh man, well, hope you have a fantastic day, buddy.
Yeah,
thank you, man. Well. My dog is licking my toes and biting my toes right now. So
nice.
Fun.
All right.
All right, everybody, thanks for listening. Send us an email, beersandbiblepodcast@gmail.com if you want to talk more about this, and we will see you guys next time.